Ladies and gents, welcome to the video. I'm GetGoodGuy, and a common theme in Battlefield 5's lifecycle has been that this game is not as good as Battlefield 1 in lots of people's opinion. You got that regular stuff of the last game then being viewed with rose-tinted glasses. Everyone says that was better. A lot of people forget the problems it had and all that kind of stuff. Me included. I also much prefer Battlefield 1 in my head, I believe. When views for Battlefield 5 were low, a lot of people just said, well, make videos on Battlefield 1 and all that kind of stuff. And so I thought, well, hold on, let's try and be objective and make a video out of this. So what I'm going to do is compare Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5 in this video. I've broken it down into 10 specific factors which I think cover pretty close to the entirety of the game and what it's built up of. We've got gunplay and weapon balance, map design, visuals, audio, atmosphere, DLC/additional content, vehicle balance, user interface, additional features, and long-term value. So for each one I'm going to go through and talk about how Battlefield 1 was, with a little bit of comparison with Battlefield 5, and then attribute a score out of 5 for each game for each factor. I've not planned this out, so I don't know what I'm going to say, I don't know what score I'm going to give, and I'm not going to keep track of it while I'm doing it. I'm going to total it up at the end so that I can find out with you which one I think is better, and hopefully you guys can do the same thing because this is all opinion based. And then in the comments you can all share your scores and which one came out on top, and we can see what the majority tends to prefer and why. All of the footage today is Battlefield 1, but it's from older videos because I'm making this video at the time when EA servers are down for the 5 billionth time, so I can't go and play the games. Alright, let's get into this. Factor or aspect number 1 is gunplay and weapon balance, and I'm going to try to be kind of brief with these, not too detailed, otherwise the video will be just crazy long. So I think the gunplay in Battlefield 1 is really good. There are aspects of it that I don't like, but overall I think it's a much more skill-based experience. Now some people complain about the spread that's in the game, but I don't mind it because if you control your shots and stick within the ranges that your weapon is supposed to be good at, then your weapon will perform optimally. I know some people don't like that some guns just can't really hit at some ranges and stuff even if you're accurate, but let's be realistic, it helps to give the guns different roles, it helps to differentiate between them, it helps to keep balance within the game, and helps to avoid the Battlefield 5 situation we've had, where at certain points certain guns have been able to kill way beyond where they should be, so then they just nerfed all the damage at range and it became a pea shooter. With all that kind of stuff in mind, you can see the value of BF1 and what it did. Now I do like some aspects of Battlefield 5's gunplay. It does allow for very fast reaction stuff, killing a lot of people if you're very good, if you can out-aim people, all that kind of stuff. But another big thing is, whereas Battlefield 1 seemed to improve its gunplay throughout, lowering the time to kill for a better experience, reducing auto-rotation for a better, more skill-based and satisfying experience as well, Battlefield 5 has given us the 2 time to kill debacles, constant tweaks and changes to the gunplay. The gunplay has, in most people's opinion, objectively got worse over time. Hopefully the 6.2 update can fix that, by the way. They reintroduced extreme auto-rotation to take away that skill factor, complete opposite to Battlefield 1, and so Battlefield 1's weapon balance and gunplay just completely wins for me, easily. I'm gonna give the gunplay in Battlefield 1 a 4 out of 5, because it's not perfect, there were problems, some guns were too good, the SMG08 for example was a real pain, but 4 seems solid, and I'm gonna give Battlefield 5 a 2, because they've just constantly screwed around with it, created lots of weapon balance issues, and pushed a lot of people away from the game. Okay, next up, map design. I've already spoken way too much on the first one. Map design. I absolutely prefer the maps of Battlefield 1. I feel like they're more diverse, they're better designed, they have some lanes in them generally, they have a lot more cover. There's less stuff that obscures where you are though, so there's more cover but less visibility issues, I feel. There are less times when it's just massive open areas, and it feels more genuine, it feels more true to what it would have been like in the time period. Battlefield 5 just doesn't give me that. The Battlefield 5 maps aren't terrible, there are some really bad ones, but they're not terrible as such. I just much preferred Battlefield 1, how it appeared, and the gameplay that it could provide, especially when you bring into the mix the gunplay and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to give the map design in Battlefield 1 a 4, because there were still some that I didn't really enjoy, and I'm going to give Battlefield 5 a 2, yeah, I'm going to give it a 2 because there are just too many areas where you just seemingly can't move without being picked off by someone prone somewhere or something. They do look pretty beautiful, by the way, Battlefield 5 maps, but I'm just not a fan. Moving on, visuals. Both games look really good. Battlefield 5 I guess was a step up in terms of actual graphical fidelity, but the actual art style, the art design of the game makes it very hard to pick people out. We complained about that a lot. Some people people say it should be hard to see people, but although camouflage is a thing and that kind of stuff, and some people want to be, you know, passive or stealthy or whatever, there's also times where someone's just stood in an area where you basically should be able to see them in reality and you just can't because of the art style. I also find, as I said, the map's just much more engaging in Battlefield 1 and the visuals are a huge aspect of that. I'm going to knock off a little though because Battlefield 1, the contrast, the brightness and contrast is really high, kind of like in Battlefield 5, so that shouldn't be ignored. I'm going to go for a 4 for Battlefield 1 and a 3 for Battlefield 5. It's already becoming pretty obvious actually at this point which one I'm preferring a lot of the time, so it's not exactly going to be a surprise unless this heavily shifts another way. But audio. I think the audio in Battlefield 1 is amazing. It again adds into that atmosphere factor. Things sound great, planes going over, the explosions, the shouts and screams, all of it. It's great. The only downside is sometimes you don't hear tanks and footsteps around you, but I think Battlefield 5 has that much worse. It feels like you just sometimes do not get feedback of vehicles and people being around you. The weapons and things sound great in both games, all that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do it where I'm just going to knock off 1 point for Battlefield 1 and 2 points for Battlefield 5, just because the audio feedback isn't as reliable in Battlefield 5, but both games do sound pretty excellent. So that's a 4 for Battlefield 1 and a 3 for Battlefield 5. Next up is our dedicated atmosphere section. I have discussed that a little so far, but when we bring it all together, so the visuals, the audio, the art design, and just the direction they took the game in, where they actually wanted at least a decent amount of realism, at least a decent link to World War I, that is just severely lacking in Battlefield 5. It still, to me, does not feel like I'm playing a World War II game. They did try to make it a bit different, so that's fine, but for me, the atmosphere just isn't there. It feels a bit hollow and empty. The audio feedback, as I said, isn't as good. I'm just not feeling it. I just don't feel that atmosphere like I do in Battlefield 1. It was a key strength of BF1. You had the horses running around, iconic World War I weapons that everyone recognized, and areas and some trench warfare. It was just better for atmosphere. It felt like you were in an actual sandbox surrounded by the real World War I world. Battlefield 5 does have that to a degree, but just nowhere near. And it's let down by the art style, by a lot of the directions they've taken the game, by a lot of the skins. I'm not getting into realism. It's not like I want the game to be ultra realistic, but where atmosphere is concerned, it's relevant. It just doesn't have it. Really isn't there. So for me, atmosphere for Battlefield 1 is a straight up 5. It's brilliant, and it's a 2. It's a 2 for Battlefield 5, I'm afraid. Onwards, DLC / additional content. So basically the extra stuff that comes to the game. In Battlefield 1, we had the premium pass, so actual chunks of stuff coming at predetermined intervals. And in Battlefield 5, we have the free model where they release stuff here and there. I'm not trying to bash on Battlefield 5, but let's be honest. A lot of people haven't been satisfied with Battlefield 5's live service. It doesn't feel much like a live service. It's improved of late, which is going to improve the score that I give to it. The Pacific stuff was generally very good and well received. We've got quite a lot of guns in the game now. We've got a fair few maps, all that kind of stuff. But there have been so many delays, so many bugs, so many problems, so many cancellations, so many weeks where the reward for the weekly Tides of War thing is just dumb. Like, at the minute we get somewhere, it's a tier skip. Like, that's almost insulting. That's so stupid to me. Whereas Battlefield 1, not everyone was satisfied with how much we got and when we got it, but we knew what we were getting. We knew when we would get it. It was generally pretty high quality. DICE had to deliver it when they said they would. It seemed to have less bugs and issues. There definitely weren't as many cancellations. And although it did split the player base, and I complained about that at the time, and I thought a live service model would be good, I do now prefer overall the Battlefield 1 model, just because of how badly implemented the Battlefield 5 live service has been. I think a good, solid live service would be better than what BF1 had. But when you put all of that together and just look at what we got and when we got it and how it was, Battlefield 1 gets a 3, Battlefield 5 gets a 2. Next up is vehicle balance. So a lot of people complain at the minute about the tanks in BF5, and I agree. They are not very good at pushing forwards, but they're way too good at sniping from range. And so the only real thing that's incentivized when you use a tank is to sit miles off and one-shot people. And it's not fun for infantry, and it can't be that satisfying for tankers, I would imagine, after a while. So that's a big deal. There have been lots of complaints about planes as well at other points, but I think Battlefield 1 was worse. The planes, it was just insane. And over pretty much the Ilya Muromets kind of ruined the game for a long time. It was way too strong, it destroyed lobbies, it took way too long to do anything about it, and so Battlefield 1 gets a 2, whereas Battlefield 5 gets a 3. Okay, next up, a quick one, user interface. It just worked. The way they displayed what you got at the end of the game, and the end around things to show who'd perform best, all that that kind of stuff. All the menus worked pretty well from what I can remember. It was great. It was nothing mind-blowing, but it was good. It was really solid. Battlefield 5, the menus at some points have been really slow. The way that the assignments are handled is poor. There's way too many times where font is used that you can't really see in other parts of the game. So that really white font and then doesn't show up in lots of areas of the game. Then you have to go into the settings, try and change it. Some areas are cluttered. Some things aren't communicated very well. It's just not very good. So in Battlefield 1, I'll give it a 4. In Battlefield 5, I'm not going to be too harsh. I'll give it a 3. Next one, additional features. I basically put this one in just so I could talk about the CTE. Battlefield 1 had a CTE. Battlefield 5 doesn't. That has a massive impact. We absolutely should have had one in Battlefield 5 if you want to avoid a lot of the problems we've had. There wasn't much else on offer in terms of additional features in Battlefield 1, whereas Battlefield 5 does have the training ground and combined arms and stuff, but really they're kind of rushed through. They're not very good. I think everyone's very aware that they're pretty bare bones and they were just shoved out because they needed to. And so Battlefield 1 for additional features gets a 3 purely for having a CTE, even though it did have incursions and that was a complete waste as well. And Battlefield 5 gets a 2 because it doesn't have a CTE, took a very long time to get RSP, it's really bare bones, and the other modes aren't very good. So that seems fair in my eyes. And my final one is long-term value. And so what I'm going to do here is, if I think that Battlefield 1 is above Battlefield 5, I'm only going to put it above it by 1. Because obviously Battlefield 1 is in a completely different point to Battlefield 5 and it's harder to tell. But Battlefield 1 does have some long-term value, as it's proving. Right now, I'm struggling to see that for Battlefield 5. I don't think it offers enough. I really hope it turns into being a great game, but I will be surprised. And so, long-term value, Battlefield 1, I'm going to give a 3, because Battlefield 5, I'm giving a 2. And through the power of editing, I will now tell you the scores. Battlefield 1 comes out with a solid 36 out of 50. Battlefield 5 comes out with a paltry 24. And so for me, Battlefield 1 is a much better game when you look at all of the aspects involved. Battlefield 5 can improve from here, and I hope it does, but I can only judge it based upon what it is now and what it's been before this. And so I want to hear what you think. What scores did you come out with? Which one came out better? Get down there in the comments, let me know, and see what other people think as well. And so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leaving a like is massive. I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you're new here. I've got loads of content coming out currently and will continue to have. The notification bell will obviously also help you stay up to date, and all the links to my social media, including Patreon, can be found in the description and my pinned comment. Here is the Board of Awesome for the epic people who support the channel on Patreon. They're all absolute heroes and I love them all deeply and of course, often. If you want to join them on the Board of Awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and my pinned comment. And with that all said, I'm GetGoodGuy and I'll see you next time. Laters. In case after the update it's not as good, because we do know that recoil is going to return, and if the STG starts bouncing around all over the shop, then using a 3x scope just isn't going to be viable for a lot of people. Now don't get me wrong, if we do get that update and it's still good, then I'll 100% make a video then and say, oh look, this is actually still epic,